Welcome here today at the interview about the latest Lightman Report of last week that was on lending. This is a really interesting topic as it's so up to date in recent months. Um, Looking back in history where Alex took us, we went from barter trade through gold to all these standards in paper with fiat currency, and now we're in digital money. So we're at a paradigm of a lot of shifts in lending. Now, if we saw a steady decline in the use of cash over the last years, I mean, Europe is sort of leading the way with almost everything in PIN transactions, the cash register in the supermarket. This, of course, has influenced the lending in getting more under regulatory overview as well. There are measurements, taken by governments and authorities. There's digital bookkeepings that come into the realm of what used to be just handing a paper note over to somebody else. And the recent pandemic shows that besides this promotion of cashless payments because it's safe, it doesn't spread the virus because there's no physical contact anymore, that there's a strong underflow from people wanting to keep cash and not just stay in cash, but you saw a recent flux in people buying gold. So, Eric, do you think that this new pandemic that we experienced this year will change the development of lending as such?
I wouldn't say change, I would say accelerate. So the change already happened. It's just in a slower pace, I would say. But I think the lending is the most important thing in the finance. So if you look back, like thousands of years, I mean, Alex did a great job in his piece that it looked back like Knights Templar and Jewish community, all those. But think about this: lending itself, debt itself, actually triggered the very first technology we call it writing. Think about this: if it's a cash business, why do you want to write it down? You don't need to write it down unless you borrow somebody's money. Then that's a ledger, right? So ledger is the first triggers the first writing. And interestingly, blockchain right now is what? Is a ledger. It's just like a decentralized ledger. Right? So I'm thinking that nowadays we talk about blockchain, we more talk about cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a way of, cash. So I think cash needs ledger, but debts, I'll say lending, need ledger even more. So I'm thinking that we're going down this path, a decentralized ledger and decentralized lending. The pandemic itself will accelerate it. But I'm not seeing that we're getting there very soon, because it takes a lot more than we think to get there. A lot of people say we can use smart contract to do P2P lending. Yeah, in a way, but in the real world, you still probably need written contract. So written contract is not form of smart contract. We need a whole legal system, accounting system to behind this decentralized lending. So we have, yes, we're gonna accelerate. We're going this direction much faster, but we're pretty far from it. Let's get on it. Let's get onto it.
I think Eric just raised a very interesting point, Alex, and that's the ledger edge of lending, because as you know, all the regulatory measurements, everything is in writing, and even more so over the last 50 years, we completely fixed on getting everything in writing and contractually agreed. If we proceed in the direction that Eric just pointed out, it's going to be an important, I would say, topic to bridge this new technology towards the possibilities of digital lending and decentralized financial systems. Do you think it will go either the way of the smart contracts, which is actually, I would say, programming, and it needs a translation of what you actually agree on, or would it be more like uploading and then verifying? What do you think about? Will the pandemic make a change because we accelerate much faster than maybe technology can handle?
Well, I think the answer is yes and yes. I think it will do both. With respect to writing it down, uploading, you have KYC. You need to know your customer, and you have anti-money laundering. So wherever there are institutions that pay their taxes, wherever there are CEOs whose address is known and can be arrested and put in jail, then you're going to have KYC, AML, you're going to have people uploading things and showing those documents. However, in previous Lightman reports, we've talked about verifiable pseudonyms. And so as you have corporations that can create names for people that they can say, yes, we have the records for this person, and yes, we've done the KYC. So we're vouching for the KYC, we're vouching for the AML, but we have the records and we're not going to show you. As these services emerge that allow you to be compliant, but have anonymity or pseudonymity, then we see that going. But I saw a company, Cash.e, cashe.co.in, and they've raised some money and they've given over 1 million loans, all entirely through smartphones. Basically, the phone does the app. And so you can have people who create a cryptocurrency or who buy a cryptocurrency and then have that for their loan reserve. So you have reserve requirement in banks. The highest I've heard of any country doing it is in times when they wanted to tighten credit, it was 10% in China. And typically it's about 5% or 4%. 2 months ago, the United States reserved the reserve, or 1 month ago rather, the United States Federal Reserve reduced the reserve requirement to 0. So you could in theory make infinite loans as a corporation and still be legally compliant. I don't know how this can possibly end in anything but tears and the loss of the reserve currency. But for right now, this is the golden age of lenders because they are freed from all reasonable gravitational constraints. You can float in, you can jump, and instead of coming back down to the air a second later, you can just keep floating into the sky as long as these loans get repaid. So this addition of this ability to have cryptocurrencies and really low reserve requirements and have the KYC done indirectly through other firms allows for a whole new golden age of loans for what in India they call the common man. I don't know, the common person sounds weird. I don't know how we would say it, but basically the loans will be cheaper. What's that?
The average person.
Yeah, it just, and people are going to need that because in the United States, a lot of people have been living on unemployment with all, 40 million people filing for unemployment. And that lasts, for 1 more month. And then at that point, people are going to go, oh crap. And they're going to need to have loans. They're going to need to collateralize things they never even dreamed of collateralizing. So I think that in your question, smart contracts are uploading both on steroids. Yeah,
that's very interesting that you say that, because we see in the historic review that you did that in times of riots and wars, authorities tend to need money to solve issues. We see that, with the decision to go back to 0 for the Federal Reserve, we see Frankfurt in Europe, I don't know what they're doing, but they massively buying bonds on credit, basically, increasing that to 7,000 billion euros already. These are enormous amounts of money that basically are owed whatever shape or form it takes. Now, in the old days, we saw historically that, authorities like kings in the old days in Europe used to solve these problems just to do away with the creditors, like they did with the Knights Templar. And, in Spain, they had in the 15th century some of these, very effective, I would say, but, virtually impossible in today's world. So do we think that we have more oversight these days? Because with all these free monies being thrown around by governments in whatever direction it takes, I just today saw the list of companies in the Netherlands applying for help to keep jobs and credits, and some of these companies had made enormous amounts of money in the past. So in the United States, they just hand out a check to the workers. There's a huge difference in how they do it.
Oh, but they gave out plenty of money to corporations in the United States. They gave away trillions.
So, Eric, if you say, do the current system protect us enough from all of this? Has blockchain-based crypto a better shot at giving us security? Because for my feeling, having that 0% coverage in the United States makes it basically a currency that you either trust or you don't, but there's nothing to back it anymore. So the criticism on cryptos in the past was, well, it's a nothing, it's a virtual currency. Right now, the dollar is topping the list of being the biggest cryptocurrency in that respect.
Yeah, I've heard people call the dollar a shitcoin, the worst shitcoin.
But as far as the criticism on crypto of the last couple of years always was, oh, it's virtual, you can't control it, there's nothing behind it. Well, you know, goes to show there's nothing behind it. So do you think that blockchain-based crypto in lending will give us, you know, as people who lend money, who normally would have a savings account, gives us better security? Because that's what we want. We want to make sure that we get our money back. You know,
I don't have a definitive answer to that yet, because I've been thinking of this problem. I think Alex in his piece, the lending piece, Lightman Report, said very well. Look the 500-year chart, right? The lending interest keep declining, and now it's in the zeros and even in the minus column. This is probably the first time in human history, and a lot of lenders don't know what to do. Meaning, interest is the money, is the value of money. When you give somebody money, you kind of expect interest back, right? You get some return, but now you don't. Now,
it's apparently
now
the passion to expect something back in return.
right. So
I mean, that's the basis of capitalism, is being able to have your capital earn a rate of interest if somebody else can get more from the money. But if there's no return on the money, how do you do capitalism?
No, so
exactly my point. So if I'm a private person, no matter in what asset class I'm in right now, do you think blockchain will give us more security in this area? Because if I have to work very hard for my assets, however I earn them, through savings, to working, to investment, I want to make more security for myself. You know, banks fall over in 2008 and they saved a couple, but we're way worse off with this pandemic than we were in 2008.
right. This is a question I ask myself too. So basically, if you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin doesn't provide any yield to anybody holding Bitcoin, just like gold, right? Then we have Ethereum, we have other coin, we have other assets. They may have, you know, we call it staking income or some other sorts of income. But think about the other aspect. We think about this: when you invest into a company, it's also a form of lending. Instead of you expect interest as your return on investment, invest into some company, you expect stock or dividend as a form of return. Now, think about Ethereum. You can create new class of asset, yes, namely ERC20 tokens that represents a business that you're operating, right? This kind of asset model might be a new way of crypto can, you know, contribute to this current problem. This is just my thinking. That and also staking also. So gave some return to the lenders and maybe security that knowingly these the original asset will not be print limitlessly, like so-called shitcoin US dollar, right?
Reading, yeah. So Alex, how do you see, is it going to make us more secure in lending? Because right now, lots of people look for alternatives, right? Your normal savings account doesn't give you any more interest. You have to pay to put your money there, and the more money you have, the more you pay. That's the current situation. So how do you see, is it going to make, for us, you know, regular, normal, average people having assets?
Well, we've talked in previous Lightman reports in our discussion about the value of cryptocurrency as being potentially non-correlated assets. Mm-hmm. So if things go bad, that they won't go down as much as the other things, because pretty much the other assets are a bit too highly coordinated. correlated. So we want something that we can have true diversification in. And previously we had this problem with Bitcoin volatility, but as we've seen in a previous Lightman report, the volatility is getting down, down, down. And now the volatility is actually not that much above gold, as an example. So that's one problem. We can find a lot of trend lines, and the trend lines have been going in favor of crypto in general. You know, we have the percentage that, Bitcoin dominance, and then we have the wider dominance of Bitcoin code base. But if we can find crypto that doesn't have correlation with investments going down, and we can have one with loans, so that if we have certain kinds of loans, too many loans that are bad within a country, like I expect it to be in some big economies, they have too many bad loans, it will affect them. But if we can have a lot of loans that are in crypto that get paid back because they have smart contracts and they have, they're cross-collateralized by a bunch of crypto, we can actually have islands of stability that will survive what most people I know are thinking is a big crash coming. Like, look at how valuable Tesla is, and look at how few cars they make. And I just see people talking themselves into thinking that it's going to keep on shooting to the moon. Things don't tend to go vertical up and then keep going up. Trees don't basically grow through the sky and into space. They fall down at some point. And so we want to have a lot of little things that allow diversification of currencies and investments and even loans. And that's what makes for greater economic stability, which makes for better political stability.
I think you made a very interesting point just now about Tesla, because if you look at the situation where, cryptocurrencies, stable coins, blockchain-based solutions are usually placed by the existing systems in a corner, like you can't trust it, there's no assets behind it, it's not collateralized, and so on and so on. If you now look at the stock value, Tesla is more valuable than Toyota. Now, if anybody knows how big Toyota is and what they produce and what the actual assets in the company are, that is quite difficult to understand for somebody like me.
Well, I can give you a statistic. Last year, there were 94 million motor vehicles produced. And right now, Tesla is almost as valuable as the majority of the companies that produce the majority of those vehicles. So you can't basically give Tesla 100 to 1 or whatever the number is, greater market value per vehicle. It's because there's no, remember, this is the same company whose CEO said all our patents belong to you. So that's a joking gamer way, all your base belong to us. That's from a mistranslated Japanese game. But he's saying, hey, we're not going to sue you for taking our patents. So there is nothing that stops other companies from making electric vehicles or solar panels, the two main businesses, or batteries. And those batteries come from Panasonic. So it isn't as if other companies can't go and make batteries. And what really matters is who has control of the cobalt. And as far as I know, and also rare earth metals. And as far as I know, 97% of rare earth metals are produced in China, and 85% of all the cobalt that's associated with the copper belt across Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia. China just made a deal with Zambia to buy part of the Victoria Falls. So China has a really good relationship with Zambia that nobody else has. So you better be on good terms with China if you want to make electric vehicles. And frankly, I don't see a way that you beat China in the long run in electric vehicles. I think I've thought for a long time that that's their thing. And so the more valuable Tesla is, the more, just like with Cisco, I had conversations with Chinese officials who asked me, hey, Cisco is worth $555 billion. All the stocks in China that are publicly listed come to $256 billion. What's going on? And I said, well, the value of a company is the net present value of all the future profits. But if it's of a whole sector and people don't know how the sector is, they use a company as a placeholder for the sector as a whole. And they said, oh, so we basically need to have a company that looks like it has the future of the internet. It's like, sure. And that led to a lot of support for Huawei, and like Huawei getting support, that same support that made Huawei such almost a nation state in power is going to go into self-driving electric vehicles that have an unquestioned access to cobalt and rare earth metals. And the only place you're going to get that is China. So I think that in all these kind of things, there has to be a level of diversification. But you can't really value Tesla so high.
I think there are a couple of points that we need to mark here. All the cobalt that comes out on an annual, mining situation is not even enough to cover the needs for a city like Shanghai to public transport batteries, for buses and taxis. There's just not enough. It's probably the reason that Elon Musk now really looking into developing alternative methods for not using cobalt for basically electricity storage. The other thing is, if I look at a lot of countries that are now promoting electric driving, okay, in Europe, petrol is very expensive because there's a lot of taxation on it. If from today on, all vehicles in my country were to drive electric, the government has a serious budget issue just because nobody would pump gas anymore.
I told this to the U.S., the Secretary of Transportation and all 50 state secretaries of transportation when I did a talk on the next 50 years from 2010 to 2060 in 2010. And I said that they need to switch to being the Department of Infrastructure, and they need to grab the public electric utilities, and they have to switch from a tax on gasoline to a tax on electricity. And they just sort of stared at me. It's like, what are you talking about?
The thing is, it's very interesting because since infrastructures become not a centralized situation anymore, it's running into serious issues in many countries, and the US is an exemplary model of that, I would say. So to have the wish to go electric is one, but you need, the materials to produce even the basic goods to do it. And you also need a system to basically support this, in the sense that it would mean that any house in my country, in any European country, any world country, needs to have a plug where, you can basically have a socket to put the plug of the car in. Otherwise, you couldn't be able to drive. So there's a lot to say for all these diversifications in driving. But I think one of the big challenges is to do without cobalt. Cobalt is going to be expensive, it's going to be rare, and there's never going to be enough, to really speed the process up. To go in that, oversight of what we just shared about having access to things. If you had one wish, Eric, into decentralized finance, when we talk about lending, what would you like to create tomorrow morning? What would you really wanted to see there?
Oh, wow. I would like to see a lot of digital assets that can be collateralized into this DeFi system. Right now, we don't have enough. So people have to say, oh, I want to borrow $10,000 worth of USDT or something. But what kind of collateral can you bring to the table? Only digital assets, right? So the real life asset, can I put up my watch as a collateral? No, you probably cannot. So in order for DeFi to flourish, we need to have a lot of DeFi assets, digital assets first, to be able to collateralize, to facilitate the whole lending and loaning and interest making, this kind of thing. Or we can have a lot of projects. Let's say you can start the startup projects. These the equities of these companies, these projects can become like stock, like share, like STO, like a token, become digital asset, and you can collateralize to borrow and loan money out. This is what I really want to see.
Okay, Alex, in the length of this, because I think collateralizing existing assets is the future, for lending. I once held a speech about collateralizing things like carbon rights. We all have this stupid ongoing thing about really dirty factories at one end of the planet selling rights to a company, maybe in a more developed country, and therefore still being able to be polluted. But if we would to be able collateralize rights like that, rights to have carbon dioxide exits, have all sorts of things going, that could be a vital start into solving a lot of problems. How do you see your, I would say, next morning wish in decentralized finance when it comes to lending? What would you like to see?
Well, I would have said the same thing as Eric, that I want to see digital assets used as collateral. And I mean, for instance, if I were Eric, it would be a joy to see Metaverse DNA be used as collateral for loans. And so I think that everybody who makes a cryptocurrency, who creates a platform, should think about how to put together lenders and borrowers, because there are lenders who have who are not getting very much. Marissa, I forget the name, Dambo, I think, wrote a book called Dead Aid, which is about aid to Africa that was just self-serving. It would be given with strings attached that would just lead to purchases and not really benefit the people. But the ability to put, we have a wonderful way to help the poor these days. And that is take all these people who are getting no money on their cash. And I think Ray Dalio said cash is trash these days, because he earns nothing. And then if you can get that and give loans to people, there are people who can actually make really good returns on small loans, on micro loans, as the Grameen Bank found and others have found. And these micro loans, because people realize the difference between good credit and not credit, have a shockingly high repayment rate, certainly much higher than Latin American governments or African governments that have been borrowing money, which are, I mean, how many times has Latin America defaulted? It's hundreds of times that they've defaulted on sovereign guarantees on loans. But the other thing is, I'd love to have something where anybody can buy, sell, borrow, loan, or swap from a mobile phone. So ultimately, I would like to add to what Eric said, to have universal access. So if you have a mobile phone, that you can basically use your biometrics to unlock it, even with pseudonymity, and you can borrow money. And if you need $1,000 or the equivalent today, you can get it. You can get it at least once, and if you pay it back, then you can get it again. And if you always pay it back, I think you should always be able to get a loan, no matter what the global conditions are, no matter what the politics are. That's what I would like to see. And that's a world that would work, like Buckminster Fuller said, a world that works for everyone.
I think that's really a very good way to look forward to the future. I want to close this interview off with one really remarkable thing that you just said, Alex, that in line with what Eric just said about digital assets. Apparently, individuals are much better at paying their debts back than governments are. I will close this interview. I look forward to the second half of your Lightman report on lending. Thank you so much, people.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. And happy birthday, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.